Welcome to another editor tutorial video. This video is going to go over something that has been long requested and has been asked about here and there, but it's no longer secreted, it's no longer occluded from sight. This is going to be the editor tutorial for how Autocast works inside of Little Wargame. Autocast on its basic premise is as follows. Let's say there's an ability that you want to occur already, such as having, training a worker, training a soldier, training an archer. We'll put down this barracks as an example and say yes, that we're fine with modification. If we go over here to the building, we see that the barracks, in fact, has a command for, let's look, train soldier, train archer, and train raider, and train mage. For the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to go ahead and remove everything except train soldier. So now this barracks can only train soldier. If we go to the ability for train soldier, we know in-game by experience, we have to train the soldier ourselves. But it doesn't autocast. The computer doesn't do it as available on its own. And the thing that makes that the case is look over here at Train Soldier. Down at the bottom, we have two abilities, two icons. Has Autocast. If set to true, this ability can be set to be cast automatically. Autocast default. If set to true, Autocast is enabled by default. Only makes sense if Has Autocast is enabled, of course. Alright, so let's go ahead and show the very base case over here for autocasting to create extra soldiers. We're going to make a couple of houses, so that we don't have to worry about supply. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to change a couple things about the soldier to indicate what's going on here. We're going to go to the soldier, and we're going to change its build time so that it builds a little bit faster so that you get the idea more robustly. Yep, we're going to change that to, 3 seconds. And we're going to reduce its cost to, we're going to say 0. Now, we go back to the abilities, and we notice that, of course, we have taken Train Soldier, and we have made it Autocast by default. The unit that it is training is, in fact, the soldier, and so we should see what we get out of this. We start up the map, and what do we see? Bada bing, bada boom. I am not touching any keys on the keyboard, nor am I doing anything with my mouse. The mouse is in the middle of the screen, and so long as there is supply available, because the soldiers are free in terms of cost, they will continuously be built out of this barracks. But this is only the base simple case for Has Autocast. This is already extremely useful if you want to do something like have enemies spawn in waves, but there is perhaps a better way to go about doing that. So now we're going to get into the more complex side of autocasting. Not with this barracks, in fact, just using the ability to train units as it has been. What we're going to do instead is we're going to make it so that this barracks will, in fact, construct soldiers in the same way when it hits a certain mana threshold. So, this is one of the ways that you can use Autocast. Autocast is primarily used to check 3 conditions, and it can act on those conditions. Usually they are the hit points of the unit that is the caster, the mana of the unit that is the caster, and of course, whether or not they are on the same team. Whether or not you are checking a comparison between 2 team values, for instance, for targeting. So we're going to go over here, we're going to tweak Train Soldier ever so slightly. We're going to make a copy of Train Soldier as is courtesy, as is proper, just in case we run into any strange values, and so that we can find this very easily for the future. We're just going to call this Train Soldier Mana, because we want to use mana to go ahead and train the soldier. And we're going to put this in the camel case. Excellent. We'll hit create. We're going to go all the way down to where Train Soldier Mana is, and we're going to note that it is of type make unit. Now, you cannot set autocast conditions on type make unit. That's why what most modders and mapmakers use is, in fact, instant. It is not perfect, but it does a lot of things that you want it to do. We're going to do universal actually type. And we're going to have it happen at instant speed. We're not going to change anything else as the image of a soldier and the same description. Everything is fine. We're going to change its mana cost, though. We're going to make the mana cost 10. And we're going to have to add mana to the barracks building in order for this to work the way that we would like, but we're in fact just going to make a new barracks. And we see here that once again we have Has Autocast is enabled, and then Autocast default is enabled. But what we want to do now is we want to create the Autocast condition, and this is actually where Autocasts get extremely interesting. So we're going to make this, this mana greater than equal to 10. So What this says is that the casting unit, in this case, whatever unit has the trained soldier ability, when it has more than or equal to 10 mana, it will automatically cast this ability. But what will the ability do? Well, we're going to go ahead and summon a unit, and the unit we're going to summon is, of course, the soldier. There we go. And so now we have functionally recreated what we're doing here with the summon ability, but we're going to change a couple of things. First, we're going to go to the barracks. We don't want to change the existing barracks. Again, just bad practice. So we're going to go ahead and set this to barracks mana. Same thing here. We're going to call this barracks mana, just to indicate that it's different. We're going to go down to the bottom, give it a period. It'll rise to the top. Excellent. We're going to go down here and we're going to remove the trained soldier ability because we don't want to use trained soldier. That is the ability that we're copying off of. What we want to use instead is our new ability, trained soldier mana. So we go down, we select it, and we hit add. Okay. Now we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to erase the existing barracks. We're going to create our new building, barracks mana. But there's one problem with barracks mana. Does it have the ability that it needs? Well, yes, it seems to, in fact. We take a look. Oh, would you look at that? It does have trained soldier mana. The problem is that trained soldier mana requires 10 mana. Remember, when the casting unit has 10 or more mana, it expends the 10 mana to summon a unit. But the barracks mana has no mana. So we're going to go ahead and do something. We're going to give it a starting mana of 0, a mana regeneration rate of 1, and we're going to give it 10 mana. Again, keep in mind, mana is the maximum mana the unit has, or building in this case. Start mana is the amount that it starts with. Mana regeneration rate is then required if there is a difference. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now we're expecting that the regeneration rate is going to happen 1 every 10 seconds. And then once it gets to 1 mana, is going to be regenerated per second. After 10 seconds, it should have 10 mana. If everything went well, then that means that this ability here on the barracks should autocast to, at instant speed, to summon a soldier. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to try that right now. Okay, it has mana. We couldn't make this if we wanted to, but I'm not clicking on anything. The mana is going up. It's about to have 10 mana. And now that it has 10 mana, it summons the soldier. And there we go. This is how you use Autocast or Autocast conditions for something like this on an is instant ability. We have done the same thing, but now we have generated a mana bar. One of the benefits of having a mana bar like this is that people can see from the outside how close the soldier is to being built. Whereas previously, the soldier was just being built and you had to have a rough sense of timing for when it's being done, especially if you want your opponents to be able to scout this in whatever your map or mod is. But while this is interesting, this still doesn't plumb the depths of what you can do with Autocast. So we're going to try something a little bit different. It's very cool that we're making barracks, and we've got a new barracks mana, and it's using mana to summon all of these soldiers. Like, that's super cool, that's interesting. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're going to make a small change here. Not to the barracks mana, but in our conception. We're going to now use an existing ability, heal, and we're going to put it on a new unit, and then we're going to have that unit, when its hit points are at a certain value, cast the healing ability on itself. Because again, we can check the mana of the thing that we want to interact with, or we can check the hit points of the thing that we want to interact with, or we can check whether or not they're on the same team. So we're on to the second thing now, what the hit points are. So we're going to go over here, and the ability that we're going to use is we're going to copy heal, only because heal is an excellent is instant ability that can be universal ability rather that can be changed and used into autocasting. Is fantastic. It's very malleable. It's a good branching point for most of the things you're doing in the editor, especially with new abilities. So we're going to call this heal autocast, and we're going to call this again heal autocasts. There are some things that we're going to change. Obviously, we're going to go down to the bottom. We're going to give it an A and put it in proper camel case, and then we're going to add a period to it, because why not? Then we're going to go down, and there are some things that the heal function does, that our ability does, that we don't want it necessarily to do. So we want it not to be the target is unit. We want the target, let's say, maybe the target can be unit. That's not too bad. Target has to be biological. Do we want it to cast 25 mana? Cost 25 mana? No, because we want to show that when the unit gets to a certain hit point value, it will go ahead and solve all of its problems itself by healing itself. And negative 150 for the damage. When you deal damage to something, it damages the unit. It takes away from its current hit points, and if it goes to 0, it dies. If you give something negative damage, that actually heals it. It does it in reverse. So, projectile speed, casting delay, cooldown, we don't want to change too many of those things, I don't think. What's important is that we want to go ahead and give this ability has autocast and autocast default. Now, let's say we want the unit to automatically cast this ability on itself, and that's the change. Get down here, get down. We're going to remove the if hits friendly and hits enemy. We just want it to hit itself. And the autocast condition is going to be this.hp less than equal to 50. That follows much in line with what we did with mana previously. Whereas before we did this.mana, this, because it's referring to the casting unit of the ability, dot mana, because it's referring to the mana field in the units tab. Now we're using this.hp, which is the current hit points of the unit. If it's less than or equal to 50, it will autocast this thing to heal itself 150. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit interesting to make that happen. We're going to go over here to the unit now, and of course a healing unit has to be a priest, right? But we're going to make a new priest, and we're going to call it Priest No Mana. And we're going to call it Priest Autocast, actually. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to call it Priest Autocast. So as you saw, we could use the mana ability to create an ability on the barracks that mimics the ability to summon or spawn new units or to train them normally. What we're going to do now, yes, because you cannot have, you have to have only underscored, no uppercase letters in your ID string. No numbers or other items like that either. We're going to go ahead and we're going to give this a period, and then we're going to remove its mana. And the reason we're going to remove its mana is that we don't want this thing to actually use heal the way that we had built, the way that it had been built. We wanted instead to use our autocast heal ability. And the autocast heal ability doesn't cost any mana. So this will be the proof that we are actually using the heal autocast ability properly. Now, there is always a danger when you're working with autocast that target units that perhaps you will cause the ability to target a unit that is out of bounds or a building that's out of bounds. Every single time that you go about doing this, I highly recommend you just go into your settings, and you have two choices. You can go into the settings, change the settings, and upload the map, or you can save a copy of the map file as a JSON onto your workstation, onto your computer, onto your desktop. In this case, this is going to be Autocast tutorial. Learn about using HP, learn about autocasting using HP, mana, and team ownership. We're going to go ahead, of course, and we're going to make the rest of these slots closed. Oh, yes. And then once we have closed all these slots, we're going to make the computer Team 2, I think, and we're going to make ourselves Team 1 as the player. We're going to go ahead and upload the map. The reason we upload the map is as follows. If something critically wrong happens when the test and we have to reload Little Wargame, which is the normal solution, we don't lose all the work that was put into this map, or more specifically into this recording, before we go ahead and do that. You don't want to work on a map for hours and hours and hours and hours, and then make one of these autocast abilities, particularly if you're fiddling with it for the first time, and then run across an exception that makes all of your forward progress moot. So what we're going to do now is we're going to spawn this priest with autocast, and we're just going to take a look at it. It's not going to use any abilities. We look, okay, it has autocast, but it's not casting automatically. Why? Because he has more than 50 hit points. He currently has 160 of 160 hit points. His this.hp value is over 50, therefore it's over the threshold. So what we're going to do, quite reasonably, is that we're going to put him under attack. We're going to make his life a little bit miserable. We're going to give, as would be a dream scenario for beast players around the entire world, we're going to have a couple of wolves just nomming on this priest. And what we hope for is that when the priest gets to 50 hit points, he's going to use this autocast ability on himself to regenerate his hit points. And there we go. He does. Notice that again. This will keep happening over and over. Because this ability doesn't use mana, it has a very short cooldown. And it doesn't require mana. It has a very short cooldown, and it's autocast. I'm going to move my mouse over here. I've got my hands up off the keyboard. My APM, here, we're going to go, can I even see my APM? It is 0 right now. I'm not doing anything. And we note now that this priest is autocasting the ability to heal itself. The target was set as self, and notice its hit point value. 120 won't do anything, 100 won't, 80 won't, 60 won't. But when he goes to 40, he recognizes that he hits the autocast condition requirement of being under 50 hit point for himself. Therefore, he casts the ability. So we're going to do something a little bit different. It's excellent to have units that cast these abilities on themselves. That's really cool. But what if we want to make sure that the cast the ability on anything that is nearby, that it's applicable? This is more broadly useful. So let's say that you want any number of things that you can. The world is your oyster once you understand autocast. So we're going to go into some examples, perhaps later if there is time. But for now, right now, the way the priest works is, even if there are other damage units around him, his heal autocast ability will only affect himself. And the reason this heal autocast ability will only affect himself is that we have the following limitations. One, it must hit a target that is biological. So if we put a catapult near him, he won't hit it. It requires, and it heals something for 150, but that's not a requirement. It doesn't hit friendly units. It doesn't hit enemy units. It only hits himself. It only hits himself. So he will only hit a biological unit of type himself if his hit points are less than or equal to 50. So we're going to make a copy of heal autocast, and we're going to make it heal other autocast. We're not going to change the existing one. We're going to leave it right there so that if you load up the map file, of course this map will be unlocked. You can take a look at it and see what it's doing, but we're going to make, heal others autocast. We're going to call this heal others autocast. We're going to put it in camel case because if you're not familiar with camel case, the first word in your variable or in your naming convention is going to be lowercase, and all the ones thereafter are going to be in uppercase. This is the frame that Little Wargame seems to take most kindly to. So it's actually also good. It's very common in programming, which is where I personally got it, and it's just useful. It's really a useful way to read things. It's very legible. We're going to go down and we're going to change the autocast conditions and abilities slightly. So we want him to hit more than himself. So he has to hit friendly and himself. But we have a problem. Right now the autocast ability is if this .HP is less than or equal to 50, heal them for 150. So here's the problem with that. If we put, let's say there's units here. You know what? Your imagination's not required. Let's say that there are allied units here. These allied units, let's say they're all at 10 hit points. Well, and the priest is at full. The priest will never heal them. Yes, the heal others autocast hits friendly. And these are friendly units. Yes, they're all friendly units. It hits himself. Okay, excellent. The problem is it heals others and it heals self, but only when the priest's hit points are less than or equal to 50. So if the priest is at full health and all of these soldiers are at 10 of their 125 or 250 health, they will never be healed by the priest. So what we have to do is we have to change the autocast condition slightly from this .HP to HP is less than or equal to 50. And this is where range matters because we're now starting to hit things that are outside of our range. We're going to make his range 8 just so that there is little chance that you won't see what's happening. And we're going to do it as follows. We have to go back into data and we have to go to into priest autocast, the unit, and we have to give him the ability to heal others autocast. And so now our priest has two abilities. He has self-heal autocast, where if his hit points are very low, he'll heal himself. And now he heals others when their hit points are below or equal 50. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. In fact, we may even want to change the ability because these soldiers are so tanky, 250 health, etc. We'll keep it as is for now. So now the priest has two autocast abilities. They both check conditions on every tick. And if there's priority, the first created autocast ability, I believe, will get priority. So if both things happen at the same time, the priest is at 50 health, but then this soldier is also below 50 health, the priest will prioritize healing itself. Which makes sense in the sense that, we want the keep the healer alive. Everyone from RPGs knows that, right? So what is a test of these units? Well, probably a lot of wolves. grinding right up on them. And of course, these aren't friendly wolves. These cannot be friendly wolves. We're going to go ahead and make them enemy wolves. And additionally, I mean, we might even add a snake or two in the back. And we'll see if this gets any units to below 50 hit points. We're going to test, and again, we're using a new autocast ability, so we want to upload or save the map. We're going to go ahead and do that. Upload is complete, so we're good to test. Now we're going to go here, and we're going to go take a look at the priest and the battle of the 3 soldiers against all these units. Notice the hit points perhaps of this soldier, it's going to go below 50 soon enough. Well, it looks like our priest isn't doing what they're supposed to do. Why did you not do what you're supposed to do? And so after looking at the priest autocast abilities, it appears that we have run into a difficulty that is actually common with autocast abilities in general, which is as follows. If you have a unit and it can autocast 2 abilities, it will naturally default to waiting for the first ability to be cast before it can cast any others. This is why it's important to make sure that the unit in question actually goes ahead and clears the cooldown of its first ability so they can make use of others. So I'm going to explain very shortly by example. Right now the priest has heal autocast and heal others autocast. It will not heal the soldiers because it is waiting to, even while it can autocast both, it's waiting for the condition of heal autocast to be fulfilled so they can go on to the second created autocast ability, heal others autocast. So what we do to solve that problem is we just say, okay, heal autocast has an autocast condition of always. It will always be active. That's one way that we can do this, but it's going to have a cooldown after which it won't be able to do anything, not of 0 seconds, but perhaps of 4 seconds. So it will not be able to do anything else after it goes ahead and uses that ability. When we look at heal others autocast, we want this to, we want the hit point to be around 150. So hit point less than equal to 150. And the cooldown for this ability, of course, is also going to be something of 2 or 3 seconds, and we'll do it as follows. Once we've given those conditions, we have now made it so that at the start of the fight, the priest will check its first autocast ability, heal autocast, and it will realize, I'm always supposed to use this. It will use the heal autocast ability on itself. Once it has done that, it won't be able to use that anymore. The only autocast ability that remains for it to use will be heal others autocast. It will check to see if any unit is under 150 hit points. If they are, it will use the ability and go on cooldown. And then the alternating cooldown between both of these autocast abilities means that the priest will come alive. It will seem to have a sense of life and vigor. That at least is the hope. So we're going to go ahead, close that, test, and we're going to see what we come up with. And we see now that what's going on over here. The priest is trying to, okay, the autocast ability is healed. It heals itself, then it heals others. Look, it heals itself, and then it heals others. And the alternating nature of all these autocasts means that these 3 soldiers and this priest are going to be able to take care of everything. It's checking to see if any unit has under 150 hit points to target itself for healing. After it makes sure that they're taken care of, it heals itself. This alternating pattern of autocast conditions, making sure they don't compete with one another, makes sure that both of them actually function the way that they're intended to do. And so, now that we know that they function the way that they're intended to do, we can smile, because we now have 2 autocast abilities, one that checks by the hit points of ourselves, the casting unit, and one that checks for the hit points of nearby units. You can also do this for mana. But let's say you don't want to do this. We'll leave this over here on the side. We're not going to delete any of the things that have been done so far, so here's a little cordon zoned off here. We're even going to break it up so that you can just take a look at it for yourself later. Here, we have this section over here. Yep. We just make more soldiers. Excellent. By using mana and an is instant universal ability. Excellent, excellent. Now we have this section over here. We're doing this also in case units want to spill over or do anything crazy, where you can just look at all of the autocast interactions that are going on with these wolves as they're desperately trying and failing to fight against the soldier priest, especially when the priest has no mana concerns and is more than willing to just take the fight to them directly. Most excellent. So the next thing that we have to get into is as follows. What if we want to target something that is on the opposing team? That's right, we don't want to deal with, we want something offensive. We want to smack people with something. How do we do that? Well, we've talked about generating an ability using autocast for mana. We've talked about generating an autocast based on hit points. Now we're going to generate an autocast based on whether or not something is in our team. So I think the perfect unit with which to express this is going to be it's got to be the mage. It's an offensive spellcaster already. So we're going to go ahead and make a copy of the mage. And of course, we're going to call it Autocast Mage. We knew we were going to call it Autocast Mage. We drag down the mage, and we're just going to call it, I think we're in fact going to call it Mage Autocast. And we're just going to call it again for the name, Mage Autocast, using camel case. We'll add a period to it, and there we go. We don't really want to use the abilities that are default on the mage, because we're going to be copying them and making our own twisted version of them. So we're going to get rid of Slow Field and Fireball. Goodbye. We're going to go over to the abilities, and we're going to look for something that we want to copy. I think it is most appropriate to copy Flame Strike. I love Flame Strike. I think it's a very well-designed spell, and hopefully you will find the same thing. We're going to make the mage Flame Strike enemies that are away from them, that are distant from them, and just do it automatically. We're going to remove the requirement of mana as well. So we're just going to call this Flame Strike Autocast. And of course, we're going to camel case for Flame Strike Autocast. We go over all the way down. We're going to add a period to it. And we're going to change a couple of things about Flame Strike Autocast already. And they are as follows. Well, we don't want the target to be a point. Making the target a point is very difficult for the editor to handle. But if we make the target a unit, okay, now we have something to play with. Now we have something to interact with. Now there's something to do there. So this is what we're going to go ahead and do for Flame Strike Autocast. And there are better ways to do this, but this is most easily going to show how Autocast works. You could do something like spawn a unit and then have the unit spawn the explosion at a point. But we don't want to do that. That's very in-depth. That's something you can see people like Derpo doing in their Dungeon Delvers archive. We're not going to get into that. We're just going to make the target is unit. And so here's what we're going to do. Are we going to remove the mana requirement? You betcha. Flame Strike. It has an AoE radius, and it does a set amount of damage in that AoE radius. It hits friendly, enemy, and self. We actually don't want it to hit, we can have it hit self, because we're going to make a little wall. And we're going to have has Autocast default. Now the problem is, we don't want the mage sitting there causing damage at its feet constantly. That's extremely dangerous. So what we want it to do is we actually want it to target enemy units. And the way that we do that, it's actually in the tooltip, the Autocast conditions. It says, for instance, this .owner equals owner will only hit units that have the same owner as the casting units. So we want this .owner is not equal to owner. Now what does this mean? Well, your units, you're player 1. We're red, we're player 1. So the owner of red's units are player 1. This Autocast condition says, fire at, when the case is that this .owner, player 1, is not equal to the owner of the casting, of the unit that's being targeted. So if we put two mages side by side, they will not target each other because this .owner is owner. The owner of that other mage is the owner of my mage. So we won't fire. But if we put two enemy mages next to each other, like a red one and a blue one, we are player 1, we are the this .owner, and the blue mage, its owner is player 2. They're not the same people. We will go ahead and fight each other. So we're going to go ahead, and I think we are going to reduce the cooldown there. We're going to set a cooldown of about 3. We're going to remove the casting delay. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead now, and we're going to give this new ability of Flame Strike all the way over here to our Mage Autocast, after we strip him of mana, of course, just to show that there is no need for mana. Yes. So we're going to go down here, and we're going to give our Mage an ability, and it's going to be the Flame Strike Autocast. Once we have done that, we're going to set up a test scenario where there are enemies for the Mage to go about destroying. I think that's appropriate, don't you? So we're going to go over here. We're going to make a little separate area because we don't want the mage interacting with the fight up here. That might cause some problems. And so we're going to do as follows. We're going to put down our new mage. Look at him. He's new and a mage. And we're going to set some barracks units that are melee and can't attack over here. We're going to go ahead and set these units. We're going to set these units over to player 2's control. We're going to add 3 soldiers like so. And then we're going to make a divisory wall between both of them such that they can never interact with one another properly. And we're going to go ahead and use, we'll use the same thing in fact. So here's the little contained area that they're going to be fighting in. Yes. And now we're going to move them over a little bit because that's aesthetically pleasing to me. We're going to plug this gap, delete some, add these, delete those, and we will get to the point very shortly. Yes, those are dead. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to place a divisory wall. This is roughly range 6. And so what we should hope for is that when we hit test and go down here, this mage will be autocasting Flame Strike onto these enemy units. And that is in fact what we see. We see that it is autocasting Flame Strike onto the units. And it is targeting specifically the enemy units, and they can do nothing. Now you may be saying, well, what if it's part of the attack? Well, we've got you. We're going to use the fact that this is a new mage, and if the changes that we make to it aren't actually that severe or dangerous, to do as follows. First, we're going to add extra range to the mage, so that you can see, extra vision rather, so that you can see what's going on perfectly. As soon as I find where the vision is. Come on, vision. Come on, show up. Show up. There we go. We're going to set its vision to 15, just so that it can see everything that's going on. Its range is, of course, 6. These soldiers will keep wanting to move over there as best as possible. You know what? We'll even add, I think, we're going to add a couple more soldiers. And you know why? Because we're going to add a few more, mages. And the reason we're going to add an extra mage is to show the point that the mage, with Autocast, they will not target each other. So the way that Autocast also works is that Autocast deliberately goes for the easiest, nearest thing that solves the requirements. So if we have improperly constructed the Flame Strike Autocast, these mages will aim at each other rather than the soldiers, because they're the closest unit that would survive, that would fulfill the conditions of Autocast. And so that is what is answered. That's extremely important to know, that the first available unit that satisfies the conditions in distance is the one that is the beneficiary of Autocast, or the recipient of Autocasts. So we're going to move you forward, and you're going to be forward as well, and you're going to be over here, and you're going to be back a little bit over there. Excellent. And once again, we're going to go ahead and upload in advance of doing anything crazy, just in case something goes wrong. We have provided all of this extra vision. So we're going to go down here, we're going to hit test. And what do we see when we go down here? Look at this. The mages are in fact going off and attacking with Flame Strike all of these soldiers. They are autocasting it every time it comes off of cooldown. We see that the cooldown is roughly 3 seconds long, and every time it comes off of cooldown, they're going ahead and firing it as an autocast condition. My hand is off the keyboard, and the mouse is over and up and to the left of the mage. We are not controlling the mage whatsoever. And just to show the point, now that there are no enemies, there is nothing that fulfills the autocast condition of Flame Strike Autocast. So we have done it. We have demonstrated that you can spawn units over here by hit points, by mana rather. You can use Autocast to go ahead and change and affect things by their hit points, and you can also determine whether or not the ownership of the team is, and have abilities autocast based on that metric. And so with that, I think this is the end of the autocast tutorial for the editor. It is a bit more in-depth, but the fact that it's in-depth is actually a boon once you understand the somewhat convoluted premises underneath of it. Because once you've understood how autocast conditions work like this, you can make tremendous boss fights, MOBAs, custom abilities, you can make seemingly intelligent enemies. This, in conjunction with other editor tutorials, allows you to make some truly fantastic mods, and there is more than enough for you to ever do once you understand these basic facets of Autocast.